Hello, dear students. So this is the third iteration, third session on module 2 of hydrology and irrigation engineering, topic hydrological losses. So in the previous classes, we were going through the evaporation and regarding the meteorological parameters we have completed. So the next aspects we'll study in this session. So in the factors affecting evaporation, so the second types or second classification that I can say is first one was the meteorological factors that we have studied, and the second one is nature of evaporating surface. Okay, so it depends on the nature of evaporating surface also. Okay, first one is soil. The rate of evaporation from soil depends on the availability of water. Example, higher rate of wet soil, lower rate of dry soil. Okay, so what it indicates, the rate of evaporation from the soil depends on the availability of the water. That is the moisture content of the soil. If you check out, let us say I have two masses. One is this mass, and one more is, let us say, this mass. Okay, we have the soil itself, but I have divided that into two different sections. So imagine this blue colored one is having more moisture content, or else this is saturated. This is a saturated soil what we have. Okay, similarly, if you check out this red colored soil what I have, imagine it has partial moisture. Okay, it is not completely moist. So at this point of time, the evaporation rate for other environmental factors that are keeping same, then the evaporation which is happening from this particular partially saturated soil will be less. And similarly, if you consider with the saturated soil, so this will be much more. This will be much more. Okay, so basically that is what is being told in the first point. So example is what, higher rate of evaporation will be there in wet soil, and a lower rate of evaporation will be there in the dry soil. So basically based on the quantum of water which is available in the soil, so the evaporation rate will depend on that. So this is a depiction of that. Okay, similarly the second one is snow and ice. Evaporation from snow can occur when the vapor pressure of the air is less than that of the snow surface. That is, only when the dew point is lower than the temperature of the snow. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Let us read this once again. Evaporation from the snow can occur when the vapor pressure of the air is less than that of the snow surface. That is, if the open atmosphere which is there above the snow, if I need to draw it, it will be something like this. This is just for the sake of explanation. Okay, imagine this as a snow. Okay, snow block. Okay, and the open atmosphere which is there above this. Okay, if this contains less moisture content or less humidity than this particular ice block, only at that point of time your evaporation is going to take place. Okay, so I'll repeat that. If the atmosphere above the snow is having less vapor than the vapor which is available in the snow, only at that time the evaporation is going to occur. So that is what is meant by this. That is, only when the dew point is lower than the temperature of the snow. Okay, only when the dew point is less than the, or else lower than the temperature of the snow. So only at that point of time your evaporation may occur from the snow or ice. Okay, and one more thing if I need to say, the we call this as a sublimation process. So the conversion of solid directly into gas without transferring it into liquid, we call it as sublimation process. Okay, so evaporation from this snow and ice is nothing but a sublimation process that might occur. Third one is reservoir. The rate of evaporation the rate of evaporation from a reservoir depends on the heat storage capacity. That is, for deep water bodies, large heat storage during summer causes less evaporation, and vice versa in winter. So what do I mean by that is, here this is a bit more interesting. If I just try to draw this here. for the reservoir. Imagine this. I'll give you two examples. Okay, one reservoir, imagine this. I'm taking the section of it. Okay, uh, or else you can take a sump of tank. Okay, this is one tank, this is one more tank. Okay, so imagine this, you have one tank, you have another tank. So imagine, even though these are not same, I'll tell you, assume that the width, the length of these particular both the tanks or reservoirs, imagine both are same. The only variation is depth. Here the depth is more, here the depth is less. Okay, only this is the difference. Imagine all the other aspect, all the other environmental factors, everything is same. So at this point of time, what will happen, I'll try to show you with this. This is nothing but a depth. Imagine this as the water. Okay, so whenever you have more quantum of water, I'll just try to show you this, just a minute. Imagine these are the both water bodies. Okay, now just check it out. What will happen as and when the surface area for both of these is more, or else if I need to say, I can directly say, if the surface area is more, then the contact of your sunlight to this water body will be more, and in turn the conversion of energy or transfer of energy will be more. But in this case, whenever I say this reservoir and I am talking about evaporation, that is one point. But the second point here, what I want to discuss is, surface area for both the things are same. As I told you, the only difference is depth. Okay, so at this point of time, imagine if the sunlight is coming in. Okay, imagine the sunlight is coming in. What is it doing? As and when it touches the top surface of your water body, though the heat energy will be absorbed by this water, the heat will be absorbed by this water. So imagine that. So since I have more depth of water here, okay, so what it will do, it will have, means whatever the energy is being put up by this sunlight, what it will do, it because of the more volume of water in this particular first case, what I am explaining right now, will withheld this energy. Okay, will withheld this energy. So I can explain that, or I can mark that as like this. So this red colored line, or else highlighting what I am doing, imagine as that is nothing but the energy which is stored over here. And because of that, what will happen, okay, or else I'll continue. Similarly, if I check out the same amount of radiation which is coming over here, okay, so then the amount of heat energy this particular smaller depth reservoir can store is less. So here we have less amount of energy that can be stored, because the quantum of water here is less. Here more amount of energy can be stored. Okay, but ultimately this is a heat energy. Okay, so heat energy, whenever I say, it doesn't always make sure that the temperature of this body will be more than this. No, it doesn't work like that. So whenever it is there, what happens is, for a larger depth of water bodies which are available, so in the summer season they will collect this heat. Okay, and because of that, what will happen in the summer season, the amount of evaporation what may happen over here, if I take different color, okay, so the amount of evaporation which is going to occur in the summer season is one thing. Okay, let us say we have fixed amount of evaporation that is occurring from a larger water body in summer season, that is fixed. Okay, similarly over here, the second one which is there, even at that point of time during the summer season, the amount of evaporation that is occurring will be again fixed to a particular point. That is the second thing what I am trying to explain. But similarly, whenever it comes to the winter season, okay, in the winter season, what will happen, the amount of sunlight is less, the intensity of sunlight is less. Okay, in both the cases. So at that point of time, what the larger reservoir will do is, it can use this collected heat energy, and then it can evaporate the water. So if I take okay, if I take this black colored one to show, even in a winter season, this larger water body can evaporate more water when you compare it with the smaller depth reservoir. I hope you got this. Okay, what does this reservoir point is trying to explain here is 2 points. One is, if the surface area is more, obviously whichever surface area is more, that is going to have more amount of evaporation. Second part is keeping all the other factors same. If the depth of water is more and one is less, so wherever the depth of water is more, it collects more amount of heat energy. The smaller depth will collect less amount of heat energy, because of which what will happen, this energy will be utilized in the winter season when the intensity of sunlight will be less. Even at that point of time, the larger depth of rainfall, this particular pond or a reservoir will evaporate more than the smaller depth one. Okay, so this is what is being said over in this example. I'll just read it once again. For deep water bodies, large heat storage during summer causing less evaporation, and vice versa in winter. That is, during the summer season, the quantum of evaporation will be less because it is storing more water, it is storing more heat. But similarly, during the winter, the same heat energy is being extracted by the reservoir or water body in terms of more quantity of evaporation. So this is the relation between the reservoir of different depths with respect to the evaporation. I hope it is clear for you. Okay. Now the next thing is quality of water. Okay, so soluble salts reduce the vapor pressure and thus reduce the rate of evaporation. So it simply indicates what, if you have contaminants in that water body, okay, that will what I can say, evaporate in a lesser rate than the water with pure or else less contaminants. Okay, soluble salts reduces the vapor pressure and thus reduces the rate of evaporation. So basically, if any impurities are there, then the evaporation rate will be less. As in the water is pure, your evaporation rate will be more. So that is basically being meant by the quality of water. Now, the next part will be a determination of this evaporation using the empirical formulas. So as I said, empirical formulas means they don't have any of the derivation, theoretical derivation. Okay. Empirical equations used for estimating the evaporation are functions of saturation vapor pressure at the water temperature, that is ES, and the actual vapor pressure in the air. That is, all these formulas are mainly dependent on this EA and ES. What is meant by that? So ES is saturation vapor pressure and EA is actual vapor pressure. Okay. So now in the syllabus we have only Mayer's and Rover's formula, but just for the sake of learning, so let us go through even the third one. Okay. So first one is Dalton's law. Okay, so this Dalton's law, the equation is given by E is equals to K into F into U into ES minus EA. Okay, where E is nothing but the evaporation, K is nothing but a coefficient, F of U, so F of U is nothing but the wind speed correction function, ES is nothing but the saturation vapor pressure, and EA is actual vapor pressure which is there. Okay, so E is equals to, this is evaporation is equals to K into FU into ES minus EA. So that is being given by Dalton's formula. So even if the questions are being asked for such empirical formulas, what they'll do is they'll give you all the values and they'll ask you to determine the evaporation rate. So that's why you need to remember these formulas well. So whichever that name of the formula is and what that formula is, that should be remembered. Now similarly, if I go for the next one, that is Mayer's formula. So E is equals to C into 1 plus U by 16 into ES minus EA. I'll repeat it. E is equals to, that is evaporation is equals to C into 1 plus U by 16 into ES minus EA, where again ES and EA are nothing but saturation vapor pressure and actual vapor pressure, and E is indicating the evaporation. Similarly, this C is nothing but a coefficient which varies from 0.36 for large lakes and 0.50 for shallow lakes. Okay. Similarly, you have U. So U is nothing but monthly mean wind speed in kilometers per hour measured at 9 meter above the ground level. U is nothing but the monthly mean wind speed in kilometers per hour measured at 9 meter above the ground level. So that is nothing but the Mayer's formula. Mayer's formula is, again I'll repeat, E is equals to C into 1 plus U by 16 into ES minus EA. So that is Mayer's formula. Similarly, we have Rover's formula. So this is E is equals to, again evaporation is equals to 0.771 into 1.465 minus 0.000732 P into bracket 0.44 plus 0.0733 U into ES minus EA. So you can check out in all the three equations we have a lot of these numbers. Okay, so how these numbers have come, basically it is based on the experimentation what they have done. Okay, so that's why we don't have any theoretical derivation over here. So basically all these empirical formulas are derived from n number of experimentation that they have conducted in a specific area, and they have derived this particular numerical numbers. So in this, E is nothing but evaporation in terms of millimeter per day. P is nothing but the mean barometric reading in mm of mercury. So P is indicating the pressure. P is indicating the pressure in Rover's formula. So mean barometric reading in terms of millimeter of mercury. Then you have U, that is mean wind velocity at 0.6 meter above the ground level in kilometer per hour. So in the Mayer's formula, we have considered it at 9 meter above the ground level. In Rover's, we are considering it only at 0.6 meter above the ground level in terms of kilometers per hour. And similarly, ES and EA are saturation vapor pressure and actual vapor pressure which are there, and all these things are measured in terms of millimeters of mercury itself. So wherever the pressure is there, it is in terms of millimeters of mercury which is going to be there. Okay, so these are the three empirical formulas what we can use for the determination of evaporation. Again I'll repeat, if you get a question on these, please remember, because they can ask you for the theoretical as well as for the problems. So theoretical, they can just ask you elaborate Mayer's formula. So at that point of time, you need to write this equation and you need to individually explain what each of the component is indicating. Okay. Similarly, they can give you the values of this and they can ask you to determine the evaporation rate using any of the formulas which are given over here. Okay. So this is about the empirical equations. Now, the second method is analytical method. Okay, so in this, the first one is water budget method. So in this, basically this is not an empirical formulas that we'll use, but here we are going to use some of the experimental setups, or in the field itself we can basically measure these particular evaporation, where we are going to take, let us say, a 10 by 10 feet of ground, and there we are going to study how much amount of water is being added and how much is being evaporated. So such kind of studies will be there in this water budget method. Okay, so let us just go through this. In the left hand side of this equation, if you can check out, it is summation of inflow minus summation of outflow is equals to change in storage plus evaporation loss. So basically water budget method, what it indicates, basically you are going to check out how much quantum of water is being input into that system. So whenever I say into the system, right, so that system may be a 10 by 10 plot where you are doing this experimentation, or any of the experimental setup that you have created in the laboratory to check out the evaporation rate. So entire that whatever system you are going to take out, so that itself we call it as what, an outline or a particular system basically. Okay, here with respect to that, so evaporation is nothing but what, inflow minus outflow. So this inflow minus outflow will be given or else will be is equals to change in storage and plus evaporation loss. Okay, so here E is equals to summation of I, that is nothing but the inflow, minus summation of O, that is outflow, plus or minus change in storage. Okay, plus or minus change in storage. So the same equation, what they have done is they have kept the evaporation over here and they have taken this change in storage to the other side. Okay, so you check it out. So whenever I say inflow, basically this equation itself is being again given over here. it has been elaborated over here. So whenever I say inflow, so what all things will be there in the inflow? It may be what? Your precipitation. So P is nothing but what? Precipitation. P. ISF is nothing but what? Surface inflow. ISF is nothing but the surface inflow, which is given over here. Similarly, IGF is nothing but what? Groundwater inflow. So these three things are going to make your total inflow. So that's why here it is summation of inflow which is given. So in this summation, what all things are coming? Your precipitation, your surface flow, and your groundwater flow. So all three together are making the total quantum of input into that particular system. Next, minus the summation of outflow. So what will be having in this outflow? We have OSF, so that is surface water outflow. OSF is surface water outflow. Similarly, we have OGF, that is surface groundwater outflow. This is groundwater outflow plus T. So T is nothing but what? Transpiration loss. So whenever you take a system, you may put some plants over there or crops for the study. So that T is nothing but the transpiration loss what we have. Plus or minus change in delta S. So this delta S is nothing but change in storage. So to explain that, imagine, just I'll try to give you an example. Okay, so imagine this is a plan of 10 by 10 plot. Okay, and imagine this as the section. This as the section of that. Okay, if I just cut it in this way and look it like this, I'm going to check out something like this. Okay, so in this basically what do I have? I have if I just try to show it, so this yellow color, you can imagine it as the soil. These yellow color, you can imagine this as the soil. Okay, so in this soil, this is the land what we have taken and imagine this is nothing but the trees or crop, anything which are available over here. Okay, so at this point of time, the input for this particular system will be three. So one will be what? You may have some precipitation that is occurring on this ground, so that will be one part. Okay, second point will be surface inflow. So some of the surface water may come here, or from the ground the water may come here. So these three are going to be the inflow. Similarly, the outflow will be what? Your surface water might go out of the system, or it may infiltrate into the ground, that is second. And the third is through these plants you may get the transpiration which is going to occur. Okay, now the last part of it is change in storage. Okay, whatever the study right now I have shown you over here will do, imagine we do it for 10 days. Okay, so we do it for how many days? We do it for 10 days. At that point of time, what they will do is, so this delta S change in storage is nothing but, imagine for this 10 by 10 plot and for a depth of, let us say, 1 feet or 10 meter by 10 meter by 1 meter, if I tell in terms of meter, if I assume in terms of meters. So at that point of time, initially at the 0th day, you have some amount of moisture content. Let us say let us say you have some 5% of moisture content before you start this experiment. Okay, at that point of time the moisture content of this soil is how much? 5%. Similarly, after the end of 10 days, after having all these inflows, okay, and outflows from the system, after 10 days, imagine the moisture content of that particular soil has increased to, let us say, 20%. Okay, at that point of time, so that this difference of 15% which has been increased is nothing but what? Increase in storage, that is given by delta S. So this is plus 15% in this case. Okay, I hope you understood what is change in storage now. So change in storage is nothing but the amount of moisture, or else the difference between the amount of moisture which is available before the start of the experiment and after the completion of experiment. So this is nothing but what? Your change in storage which is going to be there. Similarly, if imagine if initially the moisture content was 15%, now at the end of your test for 10 days, imagine the moisture was only 2%. So at that point of time, what will be your difference? It will be minus 13%. because the moisture content has reduced in the soil during your experimentation. So that minus 13% can be given over here as delta S. So that's why the moisture content can increase or it can decrease during your experimentation. So that's why this delta S may be positive or it may be negative. Okay, so whenever you apply this in this equation, it will not be in terms of percentage. You need to convert that into again quantity of water. We have various techniques with which you can basically do that, but just for the sake of simplicity and for discussion, I have made it simplified with the help of using the percentage concept over here. Okay, I hope it is clear for you. So this is how basically you can determine the evaporation rate. So evaporation rate, they have kept it here, and they have taken this to the left hand side, so that's why you got this equation, and the same equation is elaborated by these different components, and you have understood the inflow and outflow, and even for the delta storage, change in storage is being explained with this figure. Okay, so basically this is how the water budget equation can be made. Okay, so in this there are a bit of a difficulties that will occur because of the practical nature of the experimentation what we have. So what are those? Let us check out. See this: measurement of IGF and OGF and T is not possible, because IGF is what? Inflow of groundwater. So theoretically I am telling you the groundwater which is inletting over here, but how you are going to measure the quantum of water that has been added into this because of ground? That is quite impossible. Similarly, the groundwater outflow, how much has it has infiltrated out, it is quite difficult to imagine. Similarly, the T. So T is nothing but the transpiration loss. So we have few methods in the next sessions that once we check out the evapotranspiration, but even that, to measure it systematically, again it will become quite tedious job. It is not entirely not possible. This will become much more tedious than usual. Okay, so that's why these can only be estimated. First, practical difficulty, and T is usually small, so hence can be neglected. So the transpiration loss will be very small, so that can be neglected. And the water budget equation gives approximate values. So because of all the difficulties in the first 2 points what we have expressed, so the water budget equation gives the approximate values over here. Okay, so this is with respect to the water budget method for analytical methods what we have studied. Similarly, the second one method what we have is energy budget method. So last one was water budget, and this is energy budget method what we have. Okay, so let us check out here. So in the previous case we were concentrating on the quantum of water which was moving, inflow and outflow, but here in this method we are going to check out the quantum of energy that is flowing to the particular system and the energy which is going out of that particular system. Okay, so let us just check this out. Energy budget method. Based on the law of conservation of energy, incoming energy is equals to outgoing energy plus change in the stored energy. So you can check out the formula is exactly similar to the water budget equation. The only change is here we are talking in terms of the energy, whereas in the water budget method we were talking with respect to the amount or quantum of water which is inflowing and outflowing from that particular system. Okay, now just for the sake of simplicity, this drawing, if you check out, you have Hg, you have Hi, you have Hs, you have Hc, you have Hb, you have Hc, Ha, He. So all those things are basically the inflow and the outflow of energy. So let us check out what these in turn mean. Okay, so the energy balance for to evaporating surface in a period of 1 day, Hn is equals to Ha, that is sensible heat transfer from water surface to air, He, that is heat energy used up in evaporation, plus Hg, that is heat flux into the ground, plus Hs, that is heat stored in the water body, and Hi, that is net heat conducted out of the system by water flow. So basically this Hn is a net radiation which is there. Okay, so this is again given by Hc into 1 minus R minus Hb. So RHc is reflected radiation, Hc is incoming solar radiation, and R is nothing but albedo. So basically this is you can say it as a constant, okay, for a particular condition. So here what they are saying is basically again the amount of energy which is coming in, so amount of energy which is coming into the water surface for the evaporation to take place, and a few of the energy that has been transferred to the soil and the water which is storing that particular energy. Okay, so all those things are added over here. Now basically E, that is evaporation, is equals to, the formula can be Hn minus Hg minus Hs minus Hi divided by sigma L, rho L into 1 plus beta. Okay, so for short time period Hs and Hi can be neglected. All the terms except Hi can either be measured or evaluated indirectly. Ha is estimated using Brown's ratio. Okay, so again there is a different methods with which you can determine the Ha value which is going to be there. Okay, so where this rho as well as beta are nothing but the you can say these are the constant related to the latent heat. Okay, what do you mean by latent heat? Latent heat is nothing but the amount of heat the water can store within itself, is basically indirectly represented in terms of heat. Okay, so that is being given in the denominator over here. Okay, so this is how you can determine the evaporation with the help of analytical method using energy budget method. Okay.